The transport convoy moved through the Afghan mountains like a steel snake, winding through ancient rocks. Staff Sergeant Marcus Tank Rodriguez gripped his rifle tighter as the armored vehicle bounced over another pothole. 5 years of deployments had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now every fiber of his being screamed danger. "Contact ahead," crackled through his headset. The convoy ground to a halt. Rodriguez peered through the bulletproof glass at what should have been an empty valley. Instead, massive metallic structures jutted from the earth like alien flowers blooming in fast forward. The air shimmered with an otherworldly heat that had nothing to do with the desert sun. "What the hell is that?" whispered Private Jackson, the youngest member of their squad. Before anyone could answer, the world exploded in blinding white light. Rodriguez felt his body lifting, weightless, as if gravity itself had abandoned them. His last coherent thought before consciousness fled was that this wasn't any weapon in any military handbook he'd ever studied. When awareness returned, Rodriguez found himself in a place that defied every law of physics he knew. The walls curved impossibly, made of some material that seemed to breathe with its own inner light. The air tasted metallic, charged with energy that made his skin crawl. He wasn't alone. 4 other soldiers lay unconscious nearby, still wearing their combat gear. Rodriguez recognized them all from the convoy. Corporal Sarah Chen, a demolitions expert with nerves of steel. Private First Class Miguel Santos, their communications specialist. Sergeant David Kim, a sniper with an uncanny ability to find targets in impossible conditions. And Private Jackson, still looking impossibly young even in this alien environment. But there were 2 others Rodriguez didn't recognize immediately. One was a massive man with the distinctive bearing of a Marine, his uniform marking him as gunnery sergeant. The other had the lean, dangerous look of special operations, probably Navy SEAL based on the subtle insignia Rodriguez could make out. The SEAL stirred first, coming to consciousness with the fluid grace of a predator. His eyes swept the chamber, cataloging threats and opportunities in seconds. "Name's Lieutenant Commander Jake Harrison," he said quietly, extending a hand to Rodriguez. "SEAL Team 6. The Marine opened his eyes next, sitting up with a grunt that spoke of old injuries and hard-won experience. "Gunnery Sergeant Bull Thompson, 2nd Marine Division. Someone want to tell me where the hell we are?" As if summoned by his words, a section of the wall dissolved like morning mist. 3 figures entered, and Rodriguez's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. They walked upright like humans but stood nearly 8 feet tall. Their skin had a translucent quality, showing networks of veins that pulsed with bioluminescent fluid. Their heads were elongated, with large black eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. The lead figure spoke, its voice somehow appearing directly in their minds rather than through their ears. "Greetings, specimens. I am Research Director HFY of the Hegemony Science Council. You have been selected for study based on your species' interesting characteristics." "Study?" Harrison's voice carried the deadly calm that preceded violence. "Listen here, you tall drink of nightmare fuel. We're United States military personnel. You've just committed an act of war." HFY made a sound that might have been laughter. "War? Your primitive species understands only violence. We have observed your kind for decades. You fight constantly, destroy your own environment, consume resources with no thought for sustainability. Yet you also display remarkable adaptability and aggression that intrigues us." Rodriguez felt his squad stirring to wakefulness behind him. Chen's hand moved instinctively toward where her sidearm should be, finding empty air. Kim's sniper instincts had him scanning for exit points that didn't exist. Santos was probably already trying to figure out how their communication equipment might work in this place. The Galactic Hegemony has cataloged over 4,000 species across this galaxy. HFY continued, its mental voice carrying undertones of superiority that made Rodriguez's jaw clench. "Most achieve spaceflight through cooperation and peaceful evolution. Your species is unique in its combination of intelligence and seemingly endless capacity for warfare. Maybe that should tell you something about picking a fight with us," Thompson growled, rolling his shoulders like a boxer preparing for a bout. "We do not fight," HFY replied with that alien equivalent of condescension. "We study, we learn. We catalog. Your aggressive tendencies will be most interesting to examine. The neural pathways that allow such violence while maintaining tactical thinking. The psychological frameworks that permit cooperation within units while enabling brutality against enemies." Rodriguez exchanged glances with Harrison and Thompson. Years of military experience had taught all three men the same lesson. When facing an enemy, gather intelligence, assess capabilities, and prepare for the moment when talking stopped and action began. You will be provided with sustenance and basic comfort, HFY continued. In return, you will participate in our research. Physical examinations, psychological evaluations, combat simulations. We are particularly interested in testing your problem-solving abilities under stress. And if we refuse? Chen had found her voice, and it carried the same dangerous edge that Rodriguez had heard before she turned enemy positions into smoking craters. Refusal is not a viable option. However, cooperation will be rewarded. Those who prove most interesting may earn privileges, perhaps even the opportunity to serve the hegemony in our expansion efforts. The alien research director turned to leave, then paused. You should know that your planet has already been marked for integration into our collective. Your individual cooperation may determine how smoothly that process proceeds for the remainder of your species. As the aliens departed, and the wall sealed itself behind them, the 7 humans found themselves alone in their impossible prison. The silence stretched for long moments before Harrison spoke. Well, gentlemen and lady, looks like we've got ourselves a situation. Rodriguez nodded grimly. He'd been in tight spots before, but never anything quite like this. Still, he was United States Army, trained to adapt and overcome, and looking at the faces around him, the cold determination in Harrison's eyes, the barely contained fury in Thompson's posture, the calculating intelligence in Chen's expression, he knew they weren't going down without a fight. The aliens thought they were studying human warfare. They were about to learn the difference between observation and participation. The first 24 hours in the alien facility taught the 7 humans more about their captors than weeks of briefings ever could. The walls provided food through some kind of molecular assembler, creating tasteless but nutritionally complete bars that reminded Rodriguez of the worst MREs he'd ever choked down. Water appeared from hidden dispensers, perfectly pure, but lacking the mineral taste that made it feel real. More importantly, they learned about alien arrogance. HFY and its research team treated them like lab rats, completely unaware that these particular specimens had spent their entire careers studying their enemies and finding weaknesses. The aliens assumed their superior technology made them invulnerable. They had never encountered a species that specialized in turning advantages into liabilities. Motion sensors in the corners, Kim whispered, during what they assumed was a rest period. The sniper's ability to spot details others missed was proving invaluable, but they're calibrated for large movements, probably designed to track their own species. Harrison nodded approvingly. The SEAL had taken point on their escape planning, his special operations experience making him the natural choice for mission commander. What about the wall integrity? Chen ran her fingers along the seemingly solid barrier, her demolitions training letting her read the structure like a book. It's not actually solid. Some kind of energy field maintaining a specific molecular arrangement. If I could disrupt the frequency, with what? Santos had been systematically testing every piece of equipment they'd been allowed to keep. They took everything electronic. No phones, no radios, no detonators. Don't need electronics, Thompson said with a grim smile. The Marine had been remarkably quiet since their capture, but Rodriguez was beginning to recognize the signs of a man making very dangerous plans. Sometimes the old ways work best. Their conversation was interrupted by the wall dissolving. HFY entered with 2 guards, aliens that looked like warriors rather than scientists. These new specimens were broader, their bioluminescent veins pulsing more aggressively, and they carried devices that were unmistakably weapons. Today we begin physical testing, HFY announced mentally. We wish to understand human pain thresholds, recovery rates, and tactical adaptations under duress. Torture, you mean? Jackson said flatly. The young private had been growing progressively angrier since their capture, his youthful idealism curdling into something harder and more dangerous. Such crude terminology. We prefer stress testing under controlled conditions. The alien's mental voice carried what might have been amusement. You will be separated into individual chambers for baseline measurements. Any resistance will result in elevated stress levels. The guards gestured with their weapons, and the humans had no choice but to comply, as they were led through corridors that hurt to look at directly. Rodriguez caught Harrison's eye. The SEAL nodded almost imperceptibly. They were still gathering intelligence, still looking for opportunities. Rodriguez found himself alone in a chamber that was somehow worse than their group prison. The walls here pulsed with a rhythm that didn't quite match his heartbeat, creating a constant sense of unease. Devices descended from the ceiling, scanning him with lights that made his skin crawl. Fascinating, Kethvar's voice echoed in his mind. Your neural activity increases when isolated from your pack. Most species show decreased stress levels when returned to solitary conditions. A probe touched his arm, and Rodriguez felt a burning sensation that built slowly into genuine agony. He gritted his teeth, refusing to give the alien the satisfaction of hearing him scream. Years of military training had prepared him for torture, though he'd never expected it to come from something out of a science fiction movie. Remarkable pain tolerance, the mental voice continued clinically, and your stress hormones are channeling into aggressive rather than submissive responses. This explains much about your species' success despite your technological limitations. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time had no meaning in this place without windows or natural light. Rodriguez endured tests that pushed his body to its limits, probes that mapped his nervous system, and psychological evaluations designed to break his will. Through it all, he remained United States Army, holding on to his identity like an anchor in a storm of alien horror. When they finally returned him to the group chamber, he found the others in similar condition. Chen's hands were shaking from whatever they'd done to her nervous system. Kim's usually steady sniper's eyes were darting constantly, as if the aliens had somehow disrupted his ability to focus. Santos looked pale and sick, while Jackson appeared ready to explode with barely contained rage. But Harrison and Thompson looked different. Not broken, not weakened, but focused in a way that made Rodriguez's combat instincts stand at attention. These were men who had moved past endurance into a place where survival became secondary to mission completion. Report, Harrison said quietly, once the aliens had left them alone. Neurological mapping, Chen managed through gritted teeth. They're trying to understand how we process pain and fear, but they don't realize we've been trained to weaponize both. Same here, Kim added. Stress response testing. They keep expecting us to break down or submit, but they don't understand that stress makes us more dangerous, not less. Rodriguez shared his own experiences, painting a picture of aliens who understood human biology, but completely missed human psychology. They saw aggression as a bug rather than a feature, failing to grasp that humanity's tendency toward violence was exactly what made them formidable. They're making a mistake, Thompson said with quiet certainty. They think they're studying lab animals. They don't realize they're training us, Harrison nodded. Every test teaches us something about their technology, their procedures, their weaknesses. They're so focused on understanding us that they're not protecting themselves. Plus, Santos added with the first smile Rodriguez had seen since their capture, they have no idea what 7 humans can accomplish when we decide to stop playing defense. What do you mean? Jackson asked. Thompson's grin was absolutely predatory. Kid, they wanted to study human warfare. They're about to get a master class. Over the next several hours, as the aliens left them to recover from their testing, the 7 humans began to plan, not just escape, but something far more ambitious. They had been taken to learn about human military capabilities. The aliens expected to study them like specimens in a zoo. They were about to learn the difference between studying predators and being hunted by them. Harrison outlined the basics of their strategy, drawing on decades of special operations experience. Thompson added the kind of tactical flexibility that made Marines legendary. Rodriguez contributed the systematic approach that Army training had drilled into him. Chen provided explosive solutions to engineering problems. Kim offered the patience and precision of a sniper's mindset. Santos worked on communication and intelligence gathering. Even Jackson, despite his youth, brought the kind of fresh perspective that often saw solutions others missed. By the time the aliens returned for another round of testing, they were no longer dealing with prisoners. They were facing a United States military unit that had identified its mission and was preparing to execute it with extreme prejudice. The research was about to become very educational indeed. The breakthrough came during Chen's 3rd session in the torture chamber. The aliens had been testing her pain responses with increasing intensity, trying to map the point where human consciousness would break. What they didn't realize was that they were teaching a demolitions expert exactly how their energy systems worked. The pain devices. Use directed energy pulses, she whispered, when they reunited her with the group. But the energy has to come from somewhere. There's a power conduit running through the wall behind where they position the torture chair. Harrison leaned closer, his SEAL training automatically cataloging tactical information. Distance? Accessibility? Maybe 18 inches behind the wall surface. The energy builds up before each pulse, and there's a brief moment where the field destabilizes. Chen's eyes were bright with the kind of excitement that came from finding a way to blow something up. If I could cause a feedback loop at just the right moment, you could overload their power grid, Rodriguez finished. As an Army engineer, he understood the principles she was describing. But you'd need perfect timing and a way to create the feedback. Leave that to me, Thompson said quietly. The Marine had been growing more dangerous by the hour, like a bomb with a shortening fuse. I've got an idea, but it's going to require some sacrifice. Over the next few days, they refined their plan. It was insane, desperate, and had about a dozen ways it could go catastrophically wrong. In other words, it was exactly the kind of operation that military professionals lived for. The key was Santos. His communications background had led him to realize something the aliens had missed. Their telepathic communication system had a technological component. The pure mental transmission was augmented by some kind of neural interface that could be disrupted. If you knew what you were doing. They're not naturally telepathic, he explained during one of their planning sessions. They're using implants to network their consciousness. But networks can be hacked, especially when the security is designed for a species that's never encountered hostile intelligence. Kim nodded thoughtfully. That's why they keep underestimating us. Their whole society is built on cooperation and shared thinking. They literally can't conceive of deception on the level we're planning. The plan began during Jackson's next torture session. The young private had volunteered for the most dangerous part, despite being the least experienced. I'm the youngest, he'd argued. They'll expect me to break first. That gives us our opening. As the aliens subjected him to their neural mapping procedures, Jackson did something no previous test subject had ever attempted. Instead of resisting the mental intrusion, he opened his mind to it completely, then began feeding false information directly into their monitoring systems. It was a technique Harrison had learned during SEER training, the kind of mental discipline that allowed special operations personnel to survive interrogation. But Jackson took it further, using his apparent breakdown as a cover to plant suggestions directly into the alien neural network. Humans more dangerous when separated, he projected, letting his surface thoughts scream with apparent terror, while his deeper mind remained cold and calculating. Individual isolation increases unpredictable responses. Group containment more effective for compliance. The aliens absorbed this information eagerly. To them, it made perfect sense that a pack-oriented species would be more controllable when kept together. They began adjusting their procedures, planning to conduct future testing with all 7 humans in the same chamber. Meanwhile, Chen was using her own sessions to gather critical intelligence about their power systems. Each torture session taught her more about how the aliens channeled energy, how their containment fields operated, and most importantly, where the primary power conduits were located. Thompson's contribution was the most brutal. During his testing, he allowed the aliens to push him to the apparent breaking point, then passed it. He screamed, begged, and apparently broke completely, selling the performance with the kind of conviction that came from genuine suffering. But the Marine's apparent collapse was carefully calculated theater designed to make the aliens overconfident. Pain compliance achieved in the large specimen. HFY reported to its superiors after Thompson's session. Recommend expanded testing protocols. Human resistance appears finite. Rodriguez used his time under alien examination to map their facility's layout. His Army engineering training helped him understand the architectural logic of their prison, identifying structural weak points and potential choke points. Every corridor they marched him through, every chamber they tested him in, became part of a growing mental blueprint of their escape route. Harrison spent his sessions analyzing alien psychology and tactics. His special operations background had taught him to read enemies even when they weren't human. The aliens' arrogance was their weakness. They saw humans as primitive, violent, and predictable. They couldn't conceive of a species that could fake cooperation while planning annihilation. By the end of their first week in captivity, The 7 humans had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. They had successfully deceived a technologically superior species into lowering its guard, while simultaneously gathering the intelligence needed to strike back. The aliens thought they were studying human warfare. In reality, they had given 7 military professionals a week to analyze their defenses, understand their technology, and plan their destruction. The final phase began when HFY announced their new testing protocol. Based on our observations, we will conduct group examinations to study pack dynamics under stress. All specimens will be tested simultaneously. The humans exchanged glances that the aliens misinterpreted as fear. In reality, they were the looks of predators who had finally been given access to their prey. Fascinating. HFY continued as guards escorted all 7 humans to a larger chamber. Your stress hormones spike when forced into proximity during examination. This suggests that pack protection instincts override individual survival concerns. The new testing chamber was exactly what they'd hoped for. Larger, with more complex power conduits running through the walls, multiple guard positions that could be turned into tactical advantages, and most importantly, all 7 humans together with room to maneuver. As the aliens began setting up their equipment, preparing for their most comprehensive examination yet, none of them noticed the subtle hand signals passing between their test subjects. None of them realized that the humans' apparent fear responses were actually the final preparations for a military operation. The aliens had spent a week learning about human pain tolerance, stress responses, and psychological breaking points. They were about to receive a much more practical education in human warfare. Specifically, what happened when 7 highly trained soldiers decided that the time for patience was over. HFY activated the first testing device, sending energy coursing through the chamber's neural monitoring systems. It was exactly the moment Chen had been waiting for. As the alien technology reached peak power draw, she implemented the feedback loop she'd been planning for days. The explosion that followed was just the beginning. The power surge that Chen triggered didn't just disable the testing equipment. It cascaded through the alien facility's integrated systems like a virus, causing failures in ways the designers had never anticipated. Emergency lighting flickered to life as main power fluctuated, and for the first time since their capture, the humans heard something that sounded like alien panic. Thompson moved first, his apparent breakdown forgotten as Marine Corps training reasserted itself. The nearest guard was still trying to process what was happening when 240 pounds of angry leatherneck slammed into it. The alien's weapon discharged harmlessly into the ceiling as Thompson's hands found its throat. "Weapons free," Harrison barked, his SEAL command training cutting through the chaos. The others responded instantly, muscle memory taking over as they scattered into predetermined positions. Rodriguez dove for the second guard, his army combatives training adapting quickly to alien anatomy. The creature was taller and had longer reach, but it had never faced an opponent who'd learned to fight in close quarters with people trying to kill him. The alien's weapon skittered across the floor as Rodriguez put it down hard. Kim scooped up one of the dropped alien weapons, his sniper's eye immediately analyzing its operation. No trigger, but pressure-sensitive panels along the grip. He squeezed experimentally and watched energy discharge into the wall, leaving a smoking crater. "Weapons are intuitive," he called out. "Point and squeeze." Chen was already at the wall panel she'd been studying, her fingers working frantically to exploit the power feedback she'd created. "I can keep their containment fields down for maybe 5 minutes," she warned. After that, they'll reroute around the damaged conduits. HFY had backed against the far wall, its large black eyes wide with something humans had never seen in an alien face before. Genuine fear. Its mental voice projection was frantic, no longer the calm superiority of the past week. "Impossible. Primitive species cannot comprehend our technology." "Surprise," Santos said cheerfully as he relieved the lead researcher of its communication device. "We're full of tricks you haven't cataloged yet." Jackson, the youngest of their group, had claimed the third alien weapon and was covering their rear exit. His hands were steady despite everything they'd put him through, and his voice carried new authority when he spoke. Movement in the corridor. Multiple contacts approaching. Harrison assessed their tactical situation with the speed that had kept him alive through a dozen impossible missions. They were armed but vastly outnumbered. They had local superiority but were deep in enemy territory with no clear extraction route. In other words, exactly the kind of situation special operations training was designed for. Chen, how long to completely crash their power grid? Give me 30 seconds and something that explodes, she replied, still working on the wall panel. Thompson grinned as he handed her his belt buckle. Military explosive disguised as regulation equipment. The kind of thing Marines carried because you never knew when you'd need to blow something up. One improvised charge coming up. Kim, Santos establish a perimeter. Jackson, watch that door. Rodriguez helped me figure out their security protocols. Harrison was shifting into mission command mode. His mind already 3 moves ahead. The aliens had designed their facility assuming their prisoners would remain prisoners. They'd never considered what would happen if those prisoners turned out to be military. Professionals with a week to plan and the skills to execute under pressure. Santos had managed to interface with the alien communication device, his signals training allowing him to decode their emergency frequencies. Multiple response teams converging on this location, he reported. But they're confused. Their commanders are asking what kind of weapon could have caused this much system damage. They're about to find out. Harrison replied grimly. Chen's improvised explosive detonated exactly where she'd calculated, sending a power surge through the facility's main grid that turned lights into strobes and made the walls themselves flicker like bad television reception. Emergency klaxons began wailing, a sound that was probably alien for all hell is breaking loose. The first response team that rounded the corner learned a hard lesson about human tactics. Kim's sniper training translated perfectly to alien weapons, and his first shot dropped their leader before it could raise its weapon. The others scattered for cover that wasn't designed to protect against someone who'd spent years learning to kill people, who thought they were safe. Move, Harrison commanded, leading them into the corridor. Their week of captivity had given them a perfect mental map of the facility's layout. They knew where the choke points were, where the blind corners offered ambush opportunities, and most importantly, where the alien command center had to be located. Thompson took point, his Marine training making him natural choice for breaking through enemy positions. His captured alien weapon spoke repeatedly as they advanced, each shot clearing another obstacle from their path. The aliens had never encountered opponents who could advance through hostile fire while maintaining tactical discipline. These weapons pack a hell of a punch, he called back as they reached the first junction, but they're not used to fighting people who shoot back. Rodriguez was learning the same thing. The alien warriors they encountered were individually formidable, tall and strong and armed with advanced technology. But they fought like people who'd never faced truly determined resistance. They expected their superior weapons and numbers to automatically win battles, not understanding that warfare was about more than just firepower. Left turn ahead, Kim reported, consulting the mental map they'd all been building. Should lead to their main laboratory complex. Negative, Harrison decided. We're not here to escape. We're here to send a message. Santos looked up from the alien communication device he'd been monitoring. Sir, think about it, Harrison explained as they advanced through corridors that were becoming increasingly chaotic. They've been studying us to understand human warfare. They're planning to invade Earth based on what they think they've learned. The implication hit them all at once. Their escape wasn't the real mission. The real mission was making sure these aliens understood exactly what they'd be facing if they tried to invade a planet full of humans. Command center is 3 levels up, Rodriguez said, checking their position against the facility blueprint he'd been constructing, past at least 50 guards and whatever automated defenses they haven't shut down yet. Then that's where we're going, Harrison replied. His SEAL training had taught him that the most impossible missions were often the most necessary ones. Chen grinned as she armed another improvised explosive. I always wanted to blow up an alien spaceship. Not a spaceship, Thompson corrected as they reached the central lift shaft. This whole facility is underground. We're in their planetary research base. Jackson, who'd been quiet since the fighting started, finally spoke up. Good. That means we're not just escaping. We're liberating. The aliens had captured 7 humans thinking they would learn about human military capabilities through observation and testing. Instead, they were about to receive a practical demonstration of why humanity had never met a problem it couldn't kill, break, or blow up. And this was just the opening engagement. The central lift shaft became a vertical battlefield as the 7 humans fought their way toward the command center. The aliens had finally realized they weren't dealing with escaped prisoners, but with a coordinated military unit executing a precision strike against their most secure facility. Harrison led the assault with Thompson covering his six, their combined experience turning the confined space into a killing field. The SEAL's special operations training had taught him to exploit every tactical advantage, while the Marines' aggressive instincts kept their enemies off balance and unable to establish defensive positions. "Above us," Kim called out, his sniper's eye-spotting movement 3 levels up. His alien weapon spoke twice, and the would-be ambushers tumbled into the shaft, their superior technology unable to compensate for superior marksmanship. Chen had been busy turning their ascent into a demolitions exercise. Each level they passed received a small gift of improvised explosives, creating a trail of destruction that would prevent pursuit and demonstrate human ingenuity to any aliens paying attention. "Running low on boom," she reported. "Might need to get creative soon." "Plenty of alien tech to work with," Rodriguez replied, examining a power conduit they'd just passed. His engineering background was cataloging potential weaknesses in their captor's infrastructure. These systems weren't designed with sabotage in mind. Santos had maintained communication intercept throughout their climb, and what he was hearing painted a picture of an alien command structure in complete chaos. "They're calling this an unprecedented security breach," he translated. "Multiple research directors are demanding explanations for how primitive specimens could have caused this much damage." Jackson, despite being the youngest and least experienced member of their group, was proving himself under fire with the kind of courage that reminded Rodriguez why he'd chosen to serve with American soldiers. The kid's weapon handling was improving with each engagement, and his tactical instincts were developing in real time. "Contact ahead," Jackson reported as they reached the upper levels. Multiple guards, heavy weapons, prepared positions. Through the lift shaft's transparent aluminum walls, they could see the alien command center. It was everything Harrison had expected. Advanced technology, multiple monitoring stations, and clear lines of sight to coordinate planetary defense. It was also heavily defended by creatures who had finally realized they were facing something genuinely dangerous. "Classic problem," Thompson observed, studying the defensive layout. "Fortress position, overlapping fields of fire, superior numbers and technology." "Classic solution," Harrison replied. "Violence of action, shock tactics, and superior training." What happened next would be studied in alien military academies for generations to come, assuming any survived to establish such institutions. 7 humans armed with captured weapons and a week's worth of tactical intelligence executed an assault that redefined galactic understanding of small unit tactics. Rodriguez and Kim provided covering fire while Chen and Santos flanked left. Thompson went straight up the middle because Marines had never met a defensive position they couldn't punch through with sufficient aggression. Harrison coordinated the assault with Jackson providing rear security and watching for reinforcements. The aliens had positioned themselves to repel a conventional attack. They hadn't prepared for opponents who used physics itself as a weapon. Chen's demolitions expertise applied to alien power systems turned their defensive positions into traps. Energy barriers designed to stop projectiles became conductors for electrical feedback that disabled their own weapons. Kim's marksmanship training, enhanced by alien weapons that had no bullet drop or wind compensation requirements, let him engage targets at impossible angles through multiple levels of the command structure. Each shot was precision placed to maximize tactical advantage, while minimizing collateral damage to the equipment they needed intact. Santos had managed to crack their communication encryption, feeding false orders to alien response teams that sent reinforcements to empty corridors, while leaving critical positions undefended. His signals intelligence background had prepared him to turn enemy communications into weapons against themselves. Thompson's assault up the central approach was poetry, written in violence. The Marine moved through defensive fire like it was weather, using alien cover against alien defenders, turning their superior technology into obstacles that worked in his favor. Every position he took became a new firing point for the next advance. Rodriguez applied engineering principles to urban warfare, identifying structural weak points that could be exploited to collapse defensive positions. His army training had taught him to read buildings like tactical maps, finding the stress points that would bring down entire sections of alien fortification. Jackson proved that courage was more important than experience, covering gaps in their assault with the kind of aggressive fire support that kept their enemies' heads down, while his teammates maneuvered for killing shots, and Harrison orchestrated it all with the kind of tactical awareness that came from years of special operations training. He read the battlefield like sheet music, anticipating alien reactions and positioning his team to exploit every advantage. The battle for the command center lasted exactly 43 minutes. When the shooting stopped, 7 humans stood in the center of the most advanced military facility in the galactic sector, surrounded by alien technology that had just learned the difference between theoretical and practical warfare. Kethvar, the research director who'd begun this study of human military capabilities, found itself staring at the results of its investigation from the business end of an alien weapon, held by a very angry SEAL. "Research complete," Harrison said calmly. "Your findings. Humans are significantly more dangerous than your models predicted." "This is impossible." The alien mental voice was barely coherent. "Primitive technology cannot overcome superior systems." "You made a mistake," Rodriguez explained, his engineer's mind breaking down the alien's fundamental error. "You assumed technology was the deciding factor in warfare." Thompson stepped forward, his marine dress blues replaced by alien blood and burns, but his bearing still unmistakably that of a United States Marine. "Technology's just tools. Wars are won by the people who use them." Chen was already at the facility's main computer core, her demolitions training helping her identify the most efficient way to destroy galactic civilizations' accumulated intelligence about human military capabilities. "Give me 5 minutes and I can wipe every bit of data they've collected about Earth." "Negative," Harrison decided. "We're not destroying the data. We're editing it." Santos looked up from the communications station he'd commandeered. "Sir?" Harrison's smile was absolutely predatory. "They want to study human warfare? Let's give them a complete education." Over the next several hours, the 7 humans did something unprecedented in galactic history. They turned an alien research facility into a propaganda operation, using the aliens' own technology to broadcast a message across the hegemony's communication networks. The message was simple. Earth was protected by 7 billion humans, each one potentially as dangerous as the 7 soldiers who had just demolished a supposedly secure research facility. Any invasion would face not just superior technology, but superior warriors who had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare. The broadcast included tactical footage from their escape and assault, demonstrating human capabilities under pressure. It showed alien weapons being turned against their creators, alien defenses being overcome by human ingenuity, and alien overconfidence being shattered by human determination. But most importantly, it delivered a promise. Any alien force that approached Earth would face the combined military might of a species that had never met a fight it wouldn't take, and had never encountered an enemy it couldn't defeat. The galactic hegemony received humanity's first official diplomatic communication that evening. It wasn't a request for peaceful contact or an invitation to trade. It was a declaration of war against anyone stupid enough to threaten Earth. 7 humans had just changed the course of galactic history. And they were just getting started. The Alien Command Center had become humanity's first embassy to the galaxy, and the 7 soldiers were making the most of their diplomatic opportunity. Harrison had claimed the main command chair, his special operations experience helping him navigate alien technology, while Thompson and Rodriguez established a defensive perimeter that would have made their drill instructors proud. Chen was having the time of her life in what the aliens called their Technical Fabrication Center. To her demolitions-trained eye, it was the galaxy's most advanced bomb factory, complete with materials and energy sources that made her previous work look like firecrackers. "I can build devices here that'll make nuclear weapons look like cap guns," she reported cheerfully. Kim had discovered that alien surveillance technology, designed to observe primitive species, could be repurposed into the galaxy's most sophisticated sniper platform. From his position in the facility's sensor array, he could track targets across multiple star systems and deliver precision fire through means the aliens had never imagined weaponizing. Santos was deep in alien communication networks, his signals intelligence background allowing him to monitor hegemony responses across their entire civilization. What he was hearing painted a picture of a galactic government that had never encountered effective resistance and had no idea how to respond to it. Multiple council sessions are being called, he translated, filtering alien communication protocols through his understanding of command structures. Research Director Kethvar's superiors are demanding explanations for how a routine specimen collection resulted in the complete loss of their most secure facility. Jackson had been assigned to inventory alien weapons and technology, his youth making him surprisingly adaptable to equipment that operated on principles human science hadn't yet discovered. These energy weapons scale from personal defense up to planetary bombardment, he reported. Same basic technology, just different power levels. The tactical picture that emerged from their investigation was both encouraging and terrifying. The galactic hegemony possessed technology that could eliminate Earth's military in hours, but they were psychologically and tactically unprepared for opponents who fought back with human intensity. They're not warriors, Harrison concluded after reviewing alien tactical doctrines. They're administrators with advanced weapons. They've been conquering species that surrender when faced with superior technology. How many species are we talking about? Rodriguez asked, his engineer's mind automatically calculating the scope of their strategic situation. Santos consulted alien databases, his expression growing grimmer by the minute. Over 4,000 registered member species in the hegemony. Another 800 in various stages of integration. They've been expanding for millennia without encountering serious resistance. The implications were staggering. Earth faced not just an alien invasion, but a galactic empire that had been conquering worlds for longer than human civilization had existed. The 7 soldiers had gained tactical superiority over one facility, but they were literally outnumbered by species they'd never heard of. Doesn't matter, Thompson said with Marine Corps confidence. Numbers never won a war. Will to fight wins wars. Easy for you to say, Jackson pointed out. We're 7 people against a galactic empire. No, Harrison corrected, pulling up holographic displays that showed Earth's position relative to hegemony space. We're 7 people who just proved that galactic empire isn't invincible. Now we need to teach the rest of humanity what we've learned. Chen looked up from the Technical Fabrication Center, her eyes bright with explosive inspiration. What if we don't have to go home to warn Earth? What if we can bring Earth to us? The idea that formed over the next several hours was so audacious that even special operations professionals had trouble believing they were seriously considering it. But the alien technology they'd captured offered possibilities that human science fiction had barely imagined. The hegemony's research facility was more than just a prison and laboratory. It was a node in their galactic communication network, with instantaneous contact to every member world and real-time monitoring of military movements across hundreds of star systems. More importantly, it contained transportation technology that could move objects across interstellar distances without the delays imposed by conventional physics. We could bring a full Marine division here, Thompson said, studying alien transport protocols, along with Navy air support and Army engineering units. Better than that, Rodriguez added, his engineering background helping him understand the implications of alien technology. We could establish a permanent human military presence in galactic space. Turn this research facility into a forward operating base. Harrison was already thinking 3 moves ahead, his strategic training automatically considering the long-term implications. The aliens wanted to study human warfare. Let's give them a comprehensive education, full-scale military exercises, tactical demonstrations, and strategic planning sessions. Santos had been monitoring alien communications throughout their planning session, and his reports painted a picture of a hegemony leadership in complete panic. They're calling emergency sessions of their ruling council. Multiple species are demanding explanations for how humans could have captured one of their primary research facilities. Perfect, Chen said with explosive enthusiasm. Nothing motivates aliens like a demonstration of superior firepower. The next phase of their operation required careful timing and flawless execution. Using alien technology, they established communication with Earth through channels the hegemony couldn't monitor or intercept. The message they transmitted was brief and to the point. Alien contact confirmed. Initial engagement successful. Recommend immediate military response. What followed was the largest mobilization in human history. Within hours of receiving the soldiers' transmission, every military force on Earth was moving toward the coordinates they'd provided. The United States military led the response, but they were joined by forces from every nation that had ever wondered if humanity was alone in the universe. The alien transportation technology made possible what would have taken years using human spacecraft. Within days of their initial escape, the 7 soldiers found themselves commanding the advance elements of a human military force that was establishing Earth's first interstellar military presence. The aliens had expected to study human warfare through laboratory observation. Instead, they found themselves hosting a comprehensive demonstration of human military capabilities that included everything from special operations tactics to strategic nuclear doctrine. "Welcome to the galaxy," Harrison transmitted to the approaching human fleet. "Weapons-free, rules of engagement alpha. We have aliens to educate." Kethvar, still under guard in its own former laboratory, watched the arrival of human military forces with the kind of horror reserved for nightmares becoming reality. Its mental voice was barely coherent as it projected desperate questions. "Your species numbered in billions. How did you mobilize such forces so rapidly? How did you master our transportation technology without decades of study?" Thompson's answer was pure Marine Corps philosophy. "We improvise, adapt, and overcome, and we never leave fellow Marines behind." The galactic hegemony was about to learn that capturing 7 human soldiers hadn't given them specimens to study. It had given humanity a foothold in galactic space and a very clear understanding of the threats facing Earth. The real war was just beginning, and the aliens were starting to realize they'd picked a fight with the wrong species. 6 months after 7 human soldiers had been captured for alien research, the galaxy looked very different. What had begun as a routine specimen collection for the hegemony's scientific archives had evolved into the largest military confrontation in galactic history, and humanity was winning. The former alien research facility had become Forward Operating Base Terra, humanity's first permanent installation in galactic space. The original 7 soldiers now commanded a joint task force that included Marine Expeditionary Units, Navy Carrier Battle Groups, Army Armor Divisions, and Air Force Strategic Bomber Wings, all transported through captured alien technology and operating from a base that grew larger every day. Harrison had been promoted to colonel and served as overall mission commander, his special operations background making him the natural choice for coordinating humanity's first interstellar military campaign. The SEAL's tactical expertise had proven invaluable in adapting human military doctrine to 3-dimensional space warfare against opponents who thought in ways that defied terrestrial logic. Thompson, now Lieutenant Colonel Thompson, commanded the Marine component with the kind of aggressive leadership that had made his service legendary. His forces had established beachheads on 17 different hegemony worlds, demonstrating human capabilities to alien populations who had never seen effective resistance to galactic authority. Rodriguez had become the chief engineering officer for humanity's galactic expansion, his army training helping him adapt human military engineering to alien technology and environments. Under his direction, human forces were building bases, fortifications, and weapons systems that combined terrestrial tactical thinking with captured alien technology. Chen held the unofficial title of Chief of Galactic Demolitions, and her expertise had been applied to creating weapons, systems that had forced the hegemony to completely revise their understanding of warfare. Her innovations in combining human explosives doctrine with alien energy systems had produced devices that could sterilize entire star systems. Kim had evolved into humanity's premier interstellar sniper, using alien sensors and weapons to engage targets across impossible distances with precision that had become legendary among both human and alien forces. His longest confirmed kill was a hegemony fleet commander eliminated from 3 star systems away using a weapon that Kim had personally modified. Santos commanded intelligence, operations for the human galactic presence, his signals expertise allowing him to monitor alien communications across their entire civilization. His intelligence network had grown to include human agents on hundreds of alien worlds, providing real-time information about hegemony military movements and political developments. Jackson, the youngest member of their original group, had become something unprecedented in galactic history. a human diplomat who negotiated with alien species from a position of military strength. His youth and apparent innocence masked a strategic mind that had convinced over 40 species to abandon the hegemony and seek human protection. The transformation hadn't been without cost. Human casualties in the Galactic campaign numbered in the thousands, and several early engagements had gone badly when human forces underestimated alien capabilities. But humanity had adapted with characteristic efficiency, learning from defeats and turning losses into tactical advantages for future operations. More importantly, the psychological impact on the galactic hegemony had been devastating. For millennia, they had conquered through technological superiority and the implicit threat of overwhelming force. They had never faced opponents who responded to superior technology by stealing it, reverse engineering it, and improving it beyond its original specifications. Status report. Harrison requested during the morning briefing at Forward Operating Base Terra. Human forces now control or influence approximately 12% of former hegemony space, Santos reported. Intelligence indicates that 47 member species have declared independence and requested human military protection. Another 132 are considering similar action. Thompson's grin was visible even through his battle-scarred features. Hegemony military forces are avoiding direct engagement with human units. When forced into combat, they're surrendering rather than fighting. Engineering assessment shows we can maintain current expansion rates for at least 18 months, Rodriguez added. After that, we'll need to establish permanent manufacturing bases rather than relying on captured alien technology. Chen looked up from her latest project, something that appeared to violate several laws of physics and probably a few galactic treaties. I've been working on a new class of strategic weapons, something that can demonstrate human capabilities without actually destroying inhabited worlds. Diplomatic status? Harrison asked Jackson. The Hegemony Council has requested a formal ceasefire and preliminary peace negotiations, the young former private replied. They're offering to recognize human territorial claims in exchange for an end to our military expansion. Kim, monitoring long-range sensors from his position in the facility's strategic observation post, added the most important information. Long-range reconnaissance shows massive hegemony fleet movements. They're consolidating their remaining military forces for what appears to be a final decisive engagement. Harrison studied the tactical displays, his strategic training automatically calculating odds and options. Human forces had achieved remarkable success through superior tactics and adaptability, but they were still vastly outnumbered. A concentrated hegemony attack could overwhelm human defenses through sheer volume of fire. Recommendations? He asked his staff. Hit them first, Thompson replied immediately. Classic Marine doctrine. If they're massing for attack, we strike before they're ready. Negative, Chen disagreed. Better to let them come to us. I've got some defensive surprises that'll work better if they attack prepared positions. Rodriguez consulted his engineering assessments. Our supply lines are extended across multiple star systems. A defensive posture would allow us to consolidate resources while forcing them to attack through prepared positions. Santos added intelligence perspective. Alien communications indicate significant political division within the hegemony. Many member species oppose military action against humans. A defensive stance might cause their alliance to fragment. Jackson offered diplomatic insight. If we're seen as the aggressors in a major battle, it'll be harder to convince undecided species to join us. But if we're defending against hegemony attack, we become the obvious choice for species seeking protection. Kim provided the sniper's viewpoint. Let them come. I've got targeting solutions on their command ships. Take out their leadership during the opening engagement, and their attack will collapse. Harrison weighed their advice against his own assessment of the strategic situation. Humanity had achieved initial success by being unpredictable, using tactics the aliens couldn't anticipate. The question was whether to continue that strategy or shift to conventional military doctrine. We're going to do something they'll never expect, he decided. We're going to negotiate. The aliens expected humans to respond to their military buildup with either preemptive attack or defensive preparations. They didn't expect humanity's military commander to request a personal meeting with the Hegemony Council to discuss terms for ending the conflict. 3 weeks later, Harrison stood before the assembled representatives of galactic civilization in the hegemony's capital city. wearing dress blues and backed by the combined military might of Earth's armed forces. The negotiations that followed would reshape galactic politics for the next millennium. The galactic hegemony offers humanity membership in our collective, the council speaker announced. Your species' unique capabilities would be valued additions to our civilization. Harrison's response was delivered with the kind of calm confidence that came from knowing his words were backed by the most effective military force the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity appreciates the offer, but we have a counterproposal. The galactic hegemony can survive by learning to coexist with species that refuse to be conquered, or it can continue trying to conquer humanity and learn why that's a very bad idea. You threaten the peace of the galaxy, another council member projected. No, Harrison replied. We guarantee it. Any species that wants to be free from hegemony control has Earth's protection. Any species that threatens Earth faces its military response. And any government that thinks it can study humans like laboratory animals learns the difference between theoretical and practical warfare. The treaty signed that day established humanity as the galaxy's newest superpower, with territorial claims that included every species that requested Earth's protection. More importantly, it established the principle that galactic civilization would coexist with species that chose independence over integration. 7 soldiers, captured for alien research, had accidentally conquered a galactic empire through the simple expedient of refusing to surrender, and demonstrating that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology, but the will to use whatever tools were available to protect what they valued. The aliens had wanted to study human warfare. The education they received was more comprehensive than they'd ever imagined possible.